So after installing ELMSLN in Vagrant, this is what you'll get. You can get this when you install anywhere else as well, but I'm testing it out in Vagrant here. So I'm going to log in with admin. I'm going to go to online.elmsln.local. So I'm going to log in and go to listing of courses. See, there isn't really anything in here, just this Singularity 100 course. We can also go to resources and see some of the sample material that it gave us out of the box. So this provides some just different help language and guided tour and stuff like that. You can modify any of these from their defaults. General workflow with the ELMSLN user interface. If you're more comfortable with Drupal, you can hit the tilde key and actually get into all the guts behind the scenes, but we're trying to really build a platform on top of Drupal, so Drupal fades away. So general flow, you've got the network here, right? And because this is a network of systems, we're always taking that approach. Think more of the Google Apps suite of tools, if you will. And so you see we've got some grouped under administrative here, so we've got things like people, which is a people registry, a media asset, so it's asset management system, an assessment system, compliance, interactive assets, and a live question tool. In a network, we've also got CIS, which is short for this address. It stands for Course Information System. And we've got Inbox. Now, not all of these are finished by any means, but you'll notice the key ones that you probably want to deal with aren't here. So how do we actually build out a course network? Well, I'm going to click Add. Anytime you need to add something to a system, you'll have this general interaction pattern. I'm going to do new course. Then we can select a course that exists, or we can add a new one. I'm going to add a new one for the purposes of this demo. So demo space, we'll make the course name title our demo. And so these two fields are going to equate to what you'd see up in the top here, basically. Method of access. So this allows us to have open courses that sit right next to courses that require someone to log in, that sit right next to courses that require roster authorization, right? So this would be more people can create an account. This would be accounts are created by some automated method. And then there's also a mode called activation code, which maybe you're replacing a textbook. We do this internally. So a lot of times we'll replace a textbook with something that faculty members authored and charge a substantially lower cost for maintaining the textbook as opposed to buying a several $100 textbook. Kind of like OER Lite, as opposed to straight up OER, having a funding model in place to still be able to do updates. For now, I'm just going to do require login. Network structure. So see, we've got a couple different outlines we can import out of the box. You can also do a Git-based outline, which I've showed in a bunch of other screencasts, but we're not going to do that right now. Let's just go with unit-based for the time being, and we'll hope to flush these out. And now here's the tools that you might be more familiar with and what you're interested in building courses. So we can build a blog platform, we can build a content outlining platform, we can build a discussion board, we can build an open studio environment, and we can build something called Innovate, which I will also show. We don't need to fill out the additional settings. This gets into things like section details and stuff like that, but this isn't required to get going. So I'm going to hit Create Course. And what it's going to do kind of behind the scenes here is it's created a job on the server. So in ELMS Learning Network, each one of these items that it floats over here as your network actually relates to a different Drupal site. And that sounds kind of terrifying, I'm sure, but what we do is we create a ton of Drupal sites that are all much, much smaller in scope than any one site. So this gives us architectural superiority over basically everything else that exists. Why I say that confidently is that we can take each of these sites and do whatever we want with them. Our content outlining system could be miles ahead of a course we made 2 years ago. And while that sounds like a potentially bad thing, that actually allows us a lot more flexibility in instructional design. We might want to take a course, drastically change it, or demonstrate changing it to, use a non-linear structure, for example. Previously, we would have to go and purchase a different tool or build something from scratch to do that. What ELMS Learning Network allows us to do is build that in place, show it to people with addresses that make sense, have it networked into everything else in our universe that we're doing, but it's kind of compartmentalized. And so the course network demo space, in this case, there's a course called demo space, but it's actually flowing across these 5 systems that it's starting to roll through and set up currently. So this will, give out its info. It's going to update here. I'm going to point to the parts of the interface while it does that, though, because the interface is fairly standard across them because we want a relatively standard usability pattern. So I mentioned the network flyout. Pop that up and see what things are in this course network. There's the profile. So I pop that open. You can see from here I can impersonate someone. So if I had another account to impersonate, I could type that in, kind of spoofing a student account, etc. Another option under here is privacy settings. And so this is, I can do enable FERPA protection. If I do that, you'll see it's blurred out my picture here and highlighted it in red when I mouse over. So anything that has that class will get blurred out. We still need to, as the time of this recording, we still need to make it so that that propagates, so that because if I refresh this page, you'll see it disables the setting, right? The idea behind that, though, is that if we blur out live student work and we are able to do it, by turning on a mode, you can then give someone a demo or a tour of what your learning ecosystem is without fear of violating any laws. Basically, you're not allowed legally to take someone through a live course and say, "Hey, look what Bill and Sue did here." What you would need to do is, create a fake space or, take screenshots and blur things out and all that stuff. That the FERPA protection mode will let us go through real course environments that have quote unquote real student work. But if we get all the properties correct, things like names are obfuscated and blurred, things like, the assignments they've submitted are all blurred, grades blurred. So that's the idea there. There's also always a navigation area here for the application you're using, right? So in this case, this area is always telling me what I'm working with currently. So, and the iconography matches. So when I go to blog in a little bit, you'll see it has the corresponding icon there. And then these are the things I can go to in this tool. There's also some nested menus that can pop off of there. Going over to the right here, you see there's a little chevron down arrow. This gives me some more advanced options associated with the tool I'm working with. And so you can jump around to those. Settings is a fairly standard one that goes across all of them. There's also the pencil, which is for editing. So it's editing whatever the active item is. And then there's this, which you see these diverging arrows. This is the share button. And the share button gives you every possible way at which you could share the current item somewhere else. And so if I copy and pasted this short code and I paste it into somewhere else in ELMS Learning Network, it will be able to do the web service calls automatically to generate this in the way it suggests. So at the moment, you see it just says, it's a direct link to this page. Not a big deal. But we can get into some much more advanced, cool options as we step through this further. There's also the ... which is anything that's not the two most common operations. You see in this case, you've got offerings, replicating this item, sync the roster for this course, and this page, which is course network. So let's go to edit and see the general, that'll run in the background, it's kind of nice. See the general editing form experience we have in place. You see the top of the screen gets sticky. We have a little bar indicating how far down the scroll you are. We've also got the operations affixed to the bottom with the same colors every time, and we've got a jump back up to the top. You also notice that the edit pencil has changed into a little floppy disk because it's still a floppy disk after no one knowing what that is for going on 2 decades. But you could always click that and save as well. You'll see we got these things collapsed away, so you can add additional items here. Our text editor, we jump into, I'm going to find text editor. Use form, visuals, got text area. It's our general, the way your text editor ends up looking. I can hit view source on it and I get nice source formatting, kind of Dreamweaver-esque, if you will, thanks to the way this plugin operates. You can also go and dump in some templates. We have a whole bunch of different ones. We need to flush them out more, but let's say I wanted to dump in a topic reading. These are configurable because it's at the end of the day it's all Drupal, so it's very easy to throw new modules in and modify things. So let's go save that information in question. It says semester field is required here. Okay, we'll do spring. Let's save. And then you see that's our, this doesn't make any sense in this context, but I added that field there. Let's look at the structure of our network, how that's coming along. You can see the blog tool is currently installing. Innovate and Studio are up and going. Discuss is going to roll out next. But it says that courses is done, and that's the one that is most well fleshed out. So let's jump into that one. So we're going to access service. And so because I chose unit outline, the first thing I get is the unit outline here. So it's important to note I did actually go to a different site. When I did that click, you'll see now we're on courses.elmsln.local. All of our addresses are formed this way. So we've got the name of what you're working on, dot the address that was put in, slash the name of the course network. So in this case, demo space. Seeing the options here, you see they're relatively similar. We've got help, resources, and syllabus now available to us. And if we look at the network icon, you'll see this is contextualized to the section in question. So if a section doesn't use a discussion board tool in this system, you can modify it so that it's actually, that section is pointing somewhere else. And you can see we've got links, quick links to the administrative systems as well from there. Still got our share button. We've now got this accessibility options widget here. And so there's speed reader, which I can show in a minute. But let's jump into a page after we check out the outline. So here's the outline of the entire course. This kind of becomes your map that you can get to anything whenever you need to. So you see a jump into introduction. We've got this sweet interactive breadcrumb. So the breadcrumb is actually navigation, so you can jump to any level there easily. We've also got, you hit the bottom of the page, you can hit your next and previous buttons that people are pretty familiar with at this point. Mentioned accessibility options, so click that. You can do speed reader. Speed reader is really great. I use it. It's really interesting for people that have dyslexia. It's got this technique called spritz. So it's reading the words, but it's bringing the words to you instead of your eyes finding the words. And a lot of people find it helps them read things a lot faster. So it obviously doesn't make a lot of sense with Ipsum, but it's the general idea with it. There's also the ability to check accessibility of items. Now, if I run an accessibility check, that's not going to do anything right now. So let's edit this page and add something there. Okay, so we're going to dump in this case, we'll dump in a grid of videos just because that should trigger an accessibility notice. We're going to put in a heading here. Heading 2, here's my heading, all right, and then under this are a list of things, okay, bullet list. Scrolling down, you see there's a whole bunch of other options. You don't need to use these, but you can represent the instructional significance of this item. So let's say this was a quiz, and select quiz. You can also change the colors associated with primary and secondary for anything in here. So let's make this light blue, and we'll make this one dark green so you can see what they are. And you can also put in a banner. So throw a banner in here. Now these settings apply to this page and below, and I'll show what that, how that functions in a second. You can also do navigation block. So I'm going to say we want a right-hand navigation block, and we want it to display here only, and we want it to display current level of active item. Yeah, so this should show my siblings, basically. Siblings block is the label for it. It also provides some custom text if you don't want to use those other two. Remember that this week we really need to focus on design. Okay. See, there's also tag. Some of this other stuff you don't see because it's Drupal land, but tag would let you, unique tag. This can get important when you get into multiple sections and different iterations of content. Just adds flexibility. We can also change the title as it's presented, either in the outline or on the page. I generally, it's getting kind of advanced. You don't need to do that. Revisions are always there. Who authored it? Hiding this material. So this allows you to kind of have the material there so you can edit it in the flow of instruction, but students wouldn't see it, for example. So we're going to hit save on this. You see my banner is applied here because I put that in. I've also got my summary in this hideous color. Here's my grid of videos from before. Let's hit the drop down and do check accessibility. Okay, so we'll see once it did the accessibility check on my content, it's providing a recommended thing that I need to check out. And it's not saying this is wrong because it's in green, but it's telling me, hey, this is something to pay attention to. All H2 elements are not used for formatting, right? So make sure that you're actually using this tag appropriately. You didn't just style it because it makes the text bigger, quote unquote, because that's not what you're supposed to do. So it's not going to prevent you from saving that, but it does give a level of awareness raising, particularly if you were to bold some text, and just leave it as, instead of using a heading, and it's on its own paragraph line, it'll tell you, hey, maybe you wanted to use a heading here. So it's pegged to the WCAG 2.0 AA specification. You can use other specifications if you want. The other visual identifier, notice it now has a little quiz icon here next to summary. Go back to content page, you'll see those settings didn't propagate there. But you can set them at higher levels. So if I wanted to set them on like lesson 7, for example, I could scroll down here and we could do the primary color as bright yellow. That's something easy to tell. And now we've got bright yellow there. If I step down into introduction, you see now we've got bright yellow as what's picked up there. But if we go to summary, it hasn't overridden that value. So you can kind of trickle down these configuration settings and design settings. Stepping into here, we get into some more advanced options. You've got search and replace. So this will let us search across all this material. We could filter it down by book or what a parent is. So you start to type lesson, we'd say lesson 4, and get into what the title contains or the body. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some ipsum lorem, right? So this will help us find those 3 pages. I could select those, and we could do search and replace, execute, and we want to replace everywhere in the body, everywhere you find lorem, replace with Brian is awesome. Hit next. Hey, this is going to take place in 3 pages. Cool. All right, and then it'll tell us everywhere that that just happened. So now, if we go into lesson 4, there we go. We got Brian is awesome all over the place. You see there's a block quote pulled out there. We can run our accessibility check against that. See that we get a different notice for that. Hey, make sure that block quoting isn't used for indentation purposes. Cool. Another major reason for this, the content outline system existing and how you use it is in the outlining capabilities. So you'll see under the operations here, we can do add child page, we can duplicate outline, we can edit child outline, or we can edit the whole course outline. So first, let's go to something that has stuff under it. So we'll go to Unit 2 in this case. And if we look at Unit 2 in the whole context of things, there's a lot of stuff under Unit 2, right? There we go. 3 lessons and 9 other content pages. So 12 pages. So let's assume that Unit 2 is really well laid out. We've got 4 more units we want to make just like it. So we've kind of had this, pace car go out there. I could duplicate this part of the outline. and we'll call this like unit X. We're going to copy unit 2 over to unit X, and now what we'll see is we've got unit X here, and unit X is those 12 pages replicated perfectly. We can then jump in here and go, you know, we want to tweak unit X because the lesson names aren't correct. We could do edit child outline. And edit child outline uses a tool called the outline designer, which lets us, you know, move parts of the hierarchy around, add to it, and do bulk operations types of things. So this wasn't lesson 4. We want to name this lesson 21. And then we wanted to name this lesson 22 and lesson 23, for example. I could expand these items and see what's in there and go, oh, you know what, actually the summary here is supposed to come before the content page, and the content page we're going to move over into lesson 22. And actually the summary is a sub page of content page. And so we can kind of move hierarchy around, rename items, add items very quickly through here. You can see some of the operations involved, duplication, you know, jumping to edit and stuff like that. So I've done this all within the scope of unit X. So now if I go back and I just go to view mode for unit X, we'll see we've got lesson 21, 22, 23. I'm going to lesson 22, and we'll see there's the content pages, and that this last content page has a summary. And you'll see the breadcrumb navigation stacks out here. Another important aspect, everything is mobile responsive that we've been showing. So I can pull this window over a little bit, and we'll see, and it would snap into a mobile mode for things. We can get pretty far in here while it still looks pretty decent. You see we've got a breadcrumb trail. We've also started to get into being able to do administration on mobile here, as you can see. So, you know, I scroll down, I could click the edit button, and these forms are generally pretty mobile friendly, so that you could do some content editing on the go. Obviously some more cleanup to be done. We can also get into some more advanced operations associated with the outline designer. So jump into outline designer, I can copy this entire book. Let's say it's, you know, let's say we're doing a revision, and so we'll call this revision 2016. I don't want to necessarily do that on the course as it's running currently. You know, I can copy this over. We've got revision 2016. I could export this if I want to, you know, import it somewhere else. Got kind of this XML spec that can, you know, move between systems very easily. But so I've duplicated that, and I've got this whole fresh outline that can live side by side. If we get into more of the section management of things now, if we go to section list over on the side, you can see right now I've only got a master section. Its identifier is master, and you know, this depends on, you know, when you actually implement it, you know, what your identifiers are going forward. It's got 2 members in it, which is, you know, me and a service, web service user account, and it's got an instructional outline set as unit outline. So I could change this when the time is right and say, well, unit outline is actually going to use the revision now. Another interesting aspect, and we're working on the usability of this still, is tokenization. So we'll make this cool stuff token to show how this works. So I'm going to save that. And now we're going to go to our outline, which is using our new outline. Edit a page in this outline, and we're going to add in a token here. And we don't want to insert one of the big bulky tokens. So we have to make a interface so that you can, you know, browse these, but you can form a token now that references that, you know, that field that I had put in place. So in this case, I do ELMSLN section, colon, and then the name of the token I made. So in this case, it's module_1. So when I save this page now, you see it says cool stuff token instead of that module 1. So what this lets you do is you can start to, you know, if you think of these are the tokens that then can be overridden per section, And so you can actually have tokenized content. So, that token might be an instructor name, that token might be a date. It might be something more sophisticated than that. It might be the name of the LMS that a certain course uses, which is different from another one. It might be the name of the media submission tool, which is different from another one. All those little noodly details that you normally have to kind of sanitize out of material, or you have to have walls of people go through a checklist and edit manually after copying your LMS section every year. We can tokenize and programmatically replace all of that. So the tokens are a big aspect of the system, the ability to embed things anywhere. So we mentioned the share button a while ago. If I click share here, you'll see we get more options. And so we can share the individual fields of this, to get really granular and to, get a little geeky for a minute. If you read these codes, it's going to tell you exactly what it's going to do. It's going to ask, this tool is called MOOC, for Massively Open Online Course. Since it's, the foundation for closed courses, we start that way instead of going closed and then making it open. So ask the Massively Online Course space, which ends up resolving to courses.elmsln.local. Give me node 85 render a value, which is this field. So instructional significance, which would be the quiz field. So if I go and I edit these fields here, let's see, let's make this, let's make it quiz again, since we had an icon for that. And so for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to render that individual field somewhere, I could copy this token and we could go into, maybe we want to go into the end of the introduction, right? And at the end of the introduction, we'll say, as you will see in the following lesson, you have to take and we paste that token in. Hit save, and you'll see it's replaced that token with the word quiz. Now it's gotten that by actually going and asking itself. It's a little trippy because ELMS Learning Network works this way. Everything's RESTful. And why that's important is, even though your students, your faculty, your staff, even though everyone will normally go to this website and they'll go to this address, robots that are behind the scenes secretly can go to this address. And so by adding .json or .xml to any resource anywhere in the entire network, it exposes the thing you're working on as data. And if you can expose it as data, then that means you can embed it elsewhere. You can remix it. You can ask it questions. It's a foundational principle of ELMS Learning Network is that you can embed anything anywhere. And so we do. So we can go to our network. We can, for that example, we could go to Studio. So Studio is an open media submission and critique platform. And so I can add an assignment into the Studio. We'll call this Assignment 1. Wow, how original. The requirements of Assignment 1, we're just going to have them do something with images. Tell me about yourself using a picture. Only 2 pictures at most, please. Okay. Logistics of this submission type. This is just an exercise, although we could go and we could do an add and do example, right? This is public, so other people can see it. Due date, which is not currently enforced, but so people can see it. We'll say it's at 3:15 p.m. Critique, this is going to allow for a blind critique process. Criteria, hey, make sure they did the work. If I could type, that would be nice. Or we can give them an outline. So the outline would be, what type of critique? Quality of pictures, right? And maybe that's the only criteria for now. This is a pretty basic assignment. Extras, we can color code it if we really need to. Give it a number for the system to know, hey, this is item number 1. It's the first thing in order, and we're going to actually make it 1A. And we're going to hit save and add another. Right, so you could quickly start to rattle through these. After adding it, if I go to assignments, you see it shows up here. And so I'm logged in. It goes, hey, you could submit this assignment. I haven't submitted the assignment. Otherwise, it would show me a link to my assignment. Going to assignment 1 here, because we mentioned, this is the embed anything anywhere, right? We can click the share button, and you can see we've got our common ways of sharing things, right? Just put this in an iframe. Here's a direct link. We've got render as HTML, so this will actually go grab the HTML guts and return just that. We've got the individual fields again, and now you can see we're getting into a lot of them, right? So, for example, the due date, I could then take this due date, which is now a configurable event, and I can place it in my content, and now I've got a due date that's routed back to a single location. So we're kind of helping to program what curriculum is, and do so in an abstract way. This is where it gets really fun. This is the advanced widgets. And so we've got submit critique and we've got submit widget. We're going to do submit widget for purposes of this demo. And so what the submit widget does is something a little ridiculous, but we'll go into the content outline and we'll say, in the introduction here, we might have some setup saying, hey, I want you to introduce yourself. Okay, and then we're going to paste that submit widget. Now what the submit widget is going to do, and again, it's readable. It's very complicated what the submit widget does, but it is still readable, is we're going to render a submit widget by asking the, in this case, it's collaborative learning environment tool, which is Studio. Ask the Studio for a submit widget of item 2. It's a node. We're going to check against this thing called CLE assignment. So did they submit an assignment? And then what they need to actually submit, though, is a submission. So the assignment has a submission associated to it. And then this has to do with the field that they're referencing. And what should the text be that's shown? So it should be view once they've done it. Right? So let's save this. What we get instead of the other type of widget is actually an in-place submission widget. And so now I can submit assignment 1 from that token. It's going to take me to the space, and so my personal photo, right? And we're going to upload that banner again. Why not? Do upload. Right, I could upload more if I really wanted to. I won't. I see these other options because I'm an admin, but students don't see this. So I would just get that, right? I'm going to hit save. And you see, hey, I've got an achievement unlocked because it was the first submission that was created. It said, hey, you submitted this. I can see this is, what my peers would see, right? Personal photo, cool. They could comment, I could comment. And I'm going to close this because I did it, right? I did that assignment. The page detects that I did the assignment, and now when it makes the same call asking if I did it, re-renders the item. So now it gives me additional options. So the page has become aware via web services that I completed the thing on the other end. And so if I hit view, this is now going to take me to my work. If I hit edit, it's going to allow me to go and edit my work in the same type of fashion. Or I can go to the studio, which again is we're using the same iconography to indicate what it is you're doing and where. So I could jump over to the studio and see, maybe there's some more, maybe I want to just browse around, see what everyone else is doing. All right, so there's my work. I can see it, and I'll start to be able to see all my other students, in the class, their work stacking up. I can pick an assignment to filter by. Once we get into the critique aspect, and you need multiple accounts to do this, but then you start to generate widgets that allow viewing the critique feedback that you've given to someone, and it will randomly select a person for you to critique. I can also jump into my studio, start to see my gallery will start to build out here. I can drill into my submissions from a more data-driven perspective and see, what are the images that I've picked up, maybe just a video-based one. I haven't done any video, obviously, but I can go into my assignment there. Now when I view the list of assignments overall, you'll see that it has the link to my submission of this assignment as opposed to everyone else's. There's some other tools in here as well, discussions, which we can jump to. Won't go into as much detail, it's not fully fleshed out, but it's a very simplistic discussion board system. So you can add thread, drill into categories. I will say, if you know anything about Drupal site building, anytime you reach a point where you say, well, how do I change whatever, you can always hit tilde and jump in behind the scenes and start to drill into the application more. For those of you that like to do that kind of a thing, right? So, we've got the blog tool as well, just to show that really quickly, and this still needs fleshed out more. If you are a Drupal site builder, though, or you want to learn how to be one, Innovate is the place to be. And so if we go to Innovate, you see I log in and it actually shows the bar by default. I can hide it still, but it shows it by default. And Innovate, if you read the statement, basically, if you request an Innovate space, it intentionally escalates you to a Drupal admin. This is by design functionality because we want you to be the builders of tomorrow, not just the ideas I have, not just the ideas that the rest of the team has. We want you to challenge us by actively building directly into the platform what cool ideas there are out there. All right, so for example, I know there's a group at Penn State that was working on a platform using Drupal to do kind of a terrorist simulation. So like emails trickling out to students at a certain time interval. They're put into teams like the FBI, NSA, all this stuff. That is something you could legitimately build in the Innovate space, given the tool sets in place. So if you know anything about Drupal site building, even if you don't, there's tons of documentation out there. There's tons of how do I do fill in the blank that you can Google. The big things you're going to play with is in structure, you can build out content types. You can build out views, which are displays of data in Drupal. And so we're really trying to lower barriers to participation. And actually, Innovate is what was used to produce all of the systems that you'll see in ELMS Learning Network. So we're basically just templatizing our process so that other people can jump in. The other cool thing is, this makes some assumptions, but the only assumptions it really makes are you're building something that wants to look like it's part of ELMS Learning Network. It has sections, and it can talk to the rest of the network already. It already does all the automatic RESTful web service communications. So, I can drastically change this and kick it out for someone. I could maybe merge functionality of the content outline system in with the studio system. If I dig into the modules, we've got just this huge basket of modules basically that you can dig through, lots of common popular ones, lots of ones people might not be aware of. But this is really where we unlock the potential of the Drupal community at large to be able to push educational technology in ways that it never has before. We do have issues in our roadmap to take this a step further that you would be able to contribute, and so that your finished creation or even work of prototype would be able to be packaged up in such a way that it automatically issues a pull request against ELMS Learning Network, which would trip our robots to test that the functionality builds in the rest of the network, as well as let us give us something we can play with, so that we can try and make this. This is where we say sustainable innovation. We're trying to really push the envelope, but do so in a way that we can get this rolled out to other people. And so that's where each of these ideas has really come from, is how do we keep packaging up these award-winning ideas to ship out to others? And how do we keep it free, and how do we keep it ultra flexible and ultra scalable? For example, all of these being RESTful communications, it's a lot easier to take this domain, break it off from the rest of the current network, move it to a different server. And so it allows a different level of flexibility in deployment architecture that it just doesn't exist really, because everything's usually stored in a database, or it's a SaaS vendor that's already got that stuff. They're not letting you have those noodly bits. So this has been a rather comprehensive tour of ELMS Learning Network 0.2.0 capabilities. Please feel free to jump in the queue, ask us questions. It's ELMSLN.org for our community, or if you click get ELMSLN, this will take you to our GitHub repository. You can jump into the issue queue and see that we've got a lot of issues that we're cranking through and talking about. We've got a really cool merger of technologists, instructional designers, students, faculty members, administrators, all talking and having this conversation about how do we build things that people actually need instead of just providing a product at the end of the day. So thank you very much for watching, and hope to see your contributions soon. Ex uno plures.